Ethan Ward was not the kind of man who stopped for anything. At 42, he had built one of the most powerful healthcare conglomerates in the country, and his days were scheduled down to the minute. He was in and out of hospitals all the time, not for treatment, but for business. To him, hospitals were just another branch in his empire, numbers on a spreadsheet, efficiency reports, and balance sheets. That morning was no different. He arrived at St. Grace Memorial in his black chauffeured sedan, carrying a leather briefcase and a mind full of pending contracts. The hospital administrator was waiting in the lobby to brief him before his meeting with the board. Ethan nodded, politely, walking briskly toward the conference wing. This visit was about a merger deal and nothing else. Until he heard it. The sound of crying. Not a single voice, but three, overlapping in waves of heartbreak. It came from a corridor near the pediatric wing. Ethan slowed down. He could have kept walking, told himself it was none of his business, but something in the sound pulled at him. Against his usual instinct, he turned down the hallway. There, just outside a patient room, sat three small children, triplets, identical, maybe 6 or 7 years old. They were huddled together on the floor, cheeks streaked with tears, their little hands clutching one another. A nurse stood nearby, trying to soothe them, but the children didn't look at her. Their eyes kept darting toward the closed door beside them. Ethan hesitated. He was good at contracts, at negotiations, at driving his point home in boardrooms. He wasn't good at this. But he stepped closer anyway. What happened? He asked the nurse quietly. The nurse looked surprised to see him there. Their mother is in that room, critical condition. The father passed away last year. There's no other family in the city. We're waiting for social services. Ethan glanced down at the children. One of the girls had her head buried in her brother's shoulder. The other stared at him with wide, distrustful eyes, as if she could tell he didn't belong here. He crouched down, awkwardly at first. "Hey," he said softly, "what's your name?" The boy sniffled. "Eli." He gestured to his sisters. "That's Leela and that's Emma. Is your mom going to be okay?" Ethan asked, though he wasn't sure why he did. He knew the nurse had already said she wasn't. Eli shook his head, and fresh tears spilled. For a moment, Ethan couldn't move. Something unfamiliar twisted in his chest. He had grown up in privilege, shielded from scenes like this. He had never been the one to sit in a hospital hallway waiting to lose someone. But he could feel the weight of their fear, and it felt unbearable. Nurse's pager beeped, and she excused herself, leaving him there with the children. Ethan stayed. At first, they didn't speak, but slowly, as the minutes passed, they started to ask him questions. "Why are you here? Do you know our mom? Will she wake up?" He couldn't answer all of them, but he told them he was there for work, that their mom was in good hands, and that the doctors were doing everything they could. An hour passed. His meeting time came and went, but Ethan didn't leave. Something about the way Eli kept glancing at the door made him feel as if walking away would be a betrayal. Finally, a doctor came out, his face solemn. He knelt down in front of the children and spoke in gentle tones Ethan could barely hear. Eli's shoulders slumped. Leela started sobbing. Emma froze, staring at nothing. Ethan knew. The doctor left to prepare paperwork. The children clung to each other, lost in their grief. And without fully understanding why, Ethan stayed right there, letting them cry, until the nurse returned and asked if he could walk them to the family counseling room. By the time he returned to his car hours later, the merger was the last thing on his mind. That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept seeing their faces, hearing their cries echo in that sterile hallway. He told himself it wasn't his place. He didn't even know them. But that logic felt hollow. The next day, he called the hospital, asked about the triplets. Social services had placed them in temporary foster care. Siblings often got split up. In the system, the coordinator explained, There weren't many homes willing to take 3 children at once. Something in Ethan snapped. He asked for the contact information of their caseworker. By the end of the week, he had started the legal process to become their temporary guardian. People in his company thought he was losing his mind. His lawyer told him it was messy, complicated, full of bureaucracy. But every night, he visited them in their foster home. He brought dinner, helped with homework, listened to their stories about school. Slowly, the children began to smile around him. Eli, once guarded, started telling him about the books he liked. Lila began leaving little drawings in his briefcase. Emma, the quietest, would simply hold his hand when they walked together. Months passed. The court finally approved his permanent guardianship. He moved them into his penthouse, but not without changes. He turned his formal dining room into a play area. The boardroom in his home office became a study space. For the first time, Ethan learned what it meant to plan a day, not around meetings, but around school pickups and bedtime stories. There were challenges. Nights when nightmares woke them. Days when the grief came back strong. Ethan didn't have all the answers. But he was there. On the anniversary of their mother's passing, the 4 of them went to her favorite park. The children released balloons into the sky, each whispering something only they and their mother would know. Ethan stood behind them, feeling the strange, full ache of love and loss mixed together. As the balloons floated higher, Emma slipped her hand into his. "I think Mom would like you," she said quietly. Ethan's throat tightened. "I hope so." In that moment, he realized something profound. He had walked into the hospital that day, thinking about profit margins and partnerships. But what he had walked out with was something no business deal could ever give him: 3 children, who had taught him that family isn't always made by blood. Sometimes, it's made by showing up when it matters most, and staying for the rest of the story. And Ethan stayed, always.